Welcome to Beyond the Next Chapter. I'm your host, Whitney Clark. If you know me, or maybe you're new to the podcast, historical fiction is my jam. It's my favorite genre because these incredible stories always feature very brave women that are typically based on real life stories, which we love. When I heard about this book, I immediately knew that I wanted to talk to the author, and I'm so excited to have Kristin Harmel join us on the podcast today. She's out with a new book called The Stolen Life of Colette Marceau. Kristen is a New York Times bestselling author. You may be familiar with her books, The Forest of Vanishing Stars and The Book of Lost Names. That's a personal favorite of mine. She has other novels, more than a dozen novels, some which have been optioned for TV and films. Kristen has been writing since she was a teenager and is a journalist turned novelist. So, Kristen, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. And historical fiction is my jam too, so I'm excited we get to talk about it together.
It's the best. I feel like I always finish a book that's historical fiction and it makes me want to read more and makes me want to learn more about the topic. And I love that in your author's note, you include some of the books you read and some of the books you used for some of your research.
I feel like that's so important to do because in historical fiction, you are mixing fiction with fact, and I think it's important for readers to be able to understand. See, I've been in front of a camera for too long now. It's important for readers to understand, I think, which is which and where you've taken liberties with the true facts and where you've drawn true inspiration from history. So the author's note is always one of the hardest parts of the book to write, but one of the parts I'm gladdest to have written in the end.
And the author's note is always one of my favorite things to read because we learn so much about the author, what they were thinking when they were writing this book. Let's just start off with what inspired Colette's story.
Sure. So, my last few books have been about women involved in the resistance movements in France and in Poland, and the extraordinary things they did to support their side, to support freedom, to support rights for people, to support pushing the Germans out of their countries. And it was interesting to me to think about all the ways in which people did that. I've written about people who forged documents. I've written about people who smuggled arms through champagne caves. I've written about people who sheltered downed Allied airmen. I've written about people hiding in forests. I wanted to drill down on what would happen if you had somebody who had a family tradition of stealing and who used those skills to help fund the French resistance in very much a Robin Hood kind of way, stealing from the cruel and unkind and giving to deserving organizations, which in this case is the French resistance in the 1940s. But the thief at the center of our story, Colette Marceau, who the book is named after, is still stealing when we meet her 7 decades after the war. And she is still stealing with the same set of morals. But I think it creates a very interesting sort of murky gray area between right and wrong. Because during the war, of course, you're with her all the way, and yes, let's undermine the Germans, let's end the occupation, let's push all of this out. But 70 years later, is it right to steal? Do you have the right to rebalance justice on your own? Do you have the right to operate outside of the court system to try to make things right? And so it was really fascinating to me to explore all those questions.
And you write in your author's note that you hope book clubs explore that idea. I mean, what was it like for you to explore that idea?
It was fascinating. And, I think I come down on the side of Colette is a virtuous character who has always done things with a pure heart. She doesn't ever profit from these thefts on her own. She always gives the money to organizations that very directly balance out the scales. So, for instance, if she's stealing from a neo-Nazi, she might use the money to fund a Holocaust organization. Like there's a very direct correlation in her mind. Um, but but the gray area to me as a writer is the most fun place to be in a book, um, because you kind of want your characters imperfect. You want them making mistakes. You want them having a moral code that is correct, but maybe also not correct. I mean, I think that's where the fun is. And so for me, it was really enjoyable to kind of wade my way through the murky waters of whether Colette is a hero or a villain or somewhere in between.
And I love that she's almost 90 years old and she is still so passionate. She still is on this search for answers, so many years after she's had this tragic thing happen to her family. In the book, she kind of talks about feeling invisible and how
Yeah.
women over a certain age feel invisible. And as a woman, that is so frustrating because that is how
Yeah.
so many women feel. I mean, what can we do about that? I mean, what can women do with those feelings?
It's a good question. I think for Colette, her sense of being invisible to people actually sort of becomes a superpower because people look at her and she's this woman in her late 80s who you don't expect her to, be stealing millions of dollars worth of jewels. That it's just not even a thing. So, these people that she's stealing from don't look twice at her. And then she's made off with their diamond bracelet or their diamond choker or, their incredibly valuable rings or whatever. But it's interesting that you ask that because I think that maybe part of empowering Colette and making her see past the way other people saw her was a little bit of my own journey too. I'm in my mid 40s now. And I am getting to that age where like people, when you're in your 20s, there, you go out and every boy is glancing at you and like, you just feel, I don't know, like the center of attention. And it just
Yeah.
doesn't happen the same way when you get older.
You
It
kind of
does sometimes still, but it's not
yeah.
the same. But I will tell you, and this might have been something you wanted to ask me about anyhow, but I had breast cancer a few years ago. Changed my entire perspective on aging. Um, eh, I think it used to be that I'd turn another year older and I would think like, oh God, the wrinkles and I can see the years slipping away. But now I think, gosh, how lucky I am to have another year.
Mhm.
It really shifted my perspective. And I think that giving Colette a rich, full life, but also giving her work she still needs to do in her late 80s because her journey's not over, was a little bit of wish fulfillment to me. Because, after you've kind of faced down something like a cancer diagnosis where you think it could all end now or it could all end in a few years, like the idea of getting to my late 80s, I see that now as such a gift and not something um, to uh, to be regretted as you think about gray hair and wrinkles and all the things you lose. Every year is a gift and every year is a gain.
It's so beautiful and it's so true. And I think the older you get, the less you even care about what
Yeah,
people think about you. And I think maybe that's where Colette was as well.
yeah,
Tell me a little bit about how you're doing. I know you shared your breast cancer journey very publicly, urging women
yeah,
to get mammograms. How are
yeah.
you doing now?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. My last set of scans were clear. I feel great. My hair has come back, which is
Oh.
nice. I'm very much back to normal. Except for the fact that I think that once you've gone through something like that, it continues to follow you. Like I don't think a day goes by where I don't think, what if it's back? Or what if this piece of processed food is going to increase my risk of breast cancer? Or what if that glass of wine is going to increase my risk of recurrence? Or, I think you just think about things differently. So I wish that wasn't the case, but I think that's also probably something that will fade with time. I'm only about 2 years past the end of my treatment, so I think I'm still very much moving through the mental side of things.
Yeah. What have you heard from other women who have been inspired by you to go get checked and go do the things that they need to do that we all put off, unfortunately?
I do not think I have had a book event since my breast cancer diagnosis where at least one person has not come up to me and said, thank you for reminding me I needed to get a mammogram. I went and did it. And that means the absolute world to me because there are few things more important we can do for ourselves than to stay up to date with our health screenings. I mean, that sounds silly and it's like a lesson you sort of have to learn in middle age on, right? But we're responsible for protecting ourselves. Like we are given all these great tools. And if we put them off and put them off and put them off, you might be finding something too late to treat it. And I have talked to readers who have said, I went in for a mammogram because I heard about your story and they found something, but they found it stage one or they found it stage two, and it was early enough to treat. So that is my greatest hope, and that is why I keep sharing that message that it's not as scary as you think to go get your mammogram. And if you find something and you find it early, I am walking proof that life goes on, you know?
Mhm. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that's so helpful. So many of us women just need that little bit of a reminder. You wrote this book. You wrote in the author's note it was the most difficult book you've ever written because you wrote it after you'd been going through the cancer treatments. Looking back on it now, what was that experience like compared to some of your other novels?
It was a completely different experience. Typically, I'm a big outliner. I outline my books in a lot of detail. But typically, I outline and then immediately go into writing the book. So it's all fresh in my mind. I'm kind of in the midst of it. But with this book, I outlined the stolen life of Colette Marceau, and then I was diagnosed with cancer. And as I was going through the surgery and waiting for chemotherapy to start and all of that, I tried to write and I just couldn't. Like, it just wasn't there. And I think that while I was waiting for chemotherapy, it was probably just because I was terrified. And I think the fear and the terror overtook every creative part of my brain. I think probably once I started chemotherapy, it was the fear, the terror, and the chemotherapy drugs. But I could not access that part of myself, which was really scary. And it actually was a good lesson to me that I had probably put too much of my sense of self and self-worth into thinking of who I was as a writer instead of who I was as a person, which honestly is a journey that Colette goes through in the book
Mhm.
too. She's very invested in, she is a thief and that is at the core of her identity. And she forgets that if you strip that away, she's still who she is. I think I had to learn that myself as well. But it took me a good 6 months to get back to being able to write. Um, and when I finally was able to write again, when I had gone through the treatment, when I had actually gone on book tour for The Paris Daughter, which came out only about 6 weeks after I finished radiation, I was really scared. I thought, I think I can do this again, but what if chemotherapy did something to my brain? What if I can't? Like, what if I've lost that ability? What if I can't tell a story anymore? And so I think that I went into this book with a great deal of fear, even when I was able to put words on the page again. It took me a few months to really get my confidence back. And I had to go through more drafts with this one because of that. It's almost like I had to figure out who, or find my way back to who I was before I could really get the story on the page.
I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with girlfriends about our identities. I mean,
Yeah.
you can be a mom, you can be a journalist, you can be all of these things. How were you able to really like come back to yourself and find yourself?
It's a great question. And I think it goes hand in hand with the growth journey I went through, learning to appreciate each coming year rather than to look in the mirror and, regret the wrinkles, which I do. I still look in the mirror and think, like, God, that wrinkle wasn't there the other day. Why are you here? But, I, I think that when you have faced this prospect of having everything taken away, it's almost like you put the pieces back one by one and you have the choice about which pieces you carry forward with you. And I had to, during that period, figure out who I was if I wasn't a writer, because for 6 months, I really wasn't a writer. I was working on TV stuff. I was writing a television show, but that's a very different kind of writing. So who was I if I wasn't a novelist anymore? And once I learned to take that piece out, I think I was able to put it back in without making it the core of my identity. So, for all the negative things that cancer did for me, and for the shadows that it has cast over my life and all of that, the fear that I still live with, I think it also made me a better, stronger person with a better perspective on the things that are really important.
Do you ever find yourself as you get older going back to sort of hobbies and things you liked to do when you were younger?
That's a good question. And now I'm just wishing I had more time for hobbies. I feel like all I do is write. Um, No, but I just because I never had really any major hobbies other than writing.
Yeah.
I mean, that was always something I did as a passion before I did it as a career.
Well, that counts because I feel like for it, like for me, I love reading and love books, but it was something I loved as a kid and then didn't get
Yeah.
back into it because of, and then as you
Yeah.
age, you're like, oh, okay, like you don't have as much time, you're in college.
Yes.
Now I'm in my late 30s and I'm like, oh, I have time to like explore things that I enjoy, which is books and reading, which is really one of the good things about getting older, I think too.
Exactly. I totally agree. I will say that instead of it giving me a prompt to get back to hobbies, it has given me um, greater courage in pursuing things that I've always wanted to do, things I've wanted to do since I was younger, but that I thought I don't have what it takes yet, or I need to learn more yet. And writing for television and film is a really good example. That was something I was really scared to do before this. And I took screenwriting classes and I kind of tried my hand at it a little bit, but not in any earnest way because I think I was scared to fail.
Mhm.
And I think that going through the journey of cancer taught me that it doesn't matter if I fail. Like it's all about the trying. Like life is too short not to try, and life is too fragile not to just make every moment count.
Yeah, I love that. What can you tell us what shows you've been writing or working on?
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, it's been really fun. So, the TV show that my writing partner Stephen Tolkien and I wrote while I was going through chemotherapy it's called The Life Intended. It's based on my 2014
Cool.
novel of the same name, and we actually have sold it as a television show. So it's not in production yet. So and I do have to say that just because you've sold something doesn't necessarily mean it will get made, but we've already been paid to write the pilot and write the outline of the
Oh,
first season and all that. So it's the furthest I've ever been in that process. And I'm also working on developing The Winemaker's Wife, which was my 2019 novel.
cool.
And believe it or not, my very first novel from 20 years ago called,
Wow.
and I swear I'm going to preface this by saying it's not a real how to guide, but I started off writing romantic comedy. My very first book 20 years ago was called How to Sleep with a Movie Star.
Oh,
And through a strange series of events, that one is now in motion as a potential film now as well that I'm writing with a writing partner. So it's just been fun. It's exploring a different avenue for my writing, and just a different way to tell stories. It's
yeah.
been really cool.
And it's so cool because I feel like that's sort of the thing these days. There's so many books that get picked up. And as you mentioned,
Yeah.
it's a long process. So you kind of
Yeah.
never know where it's going to go. What's been like your biggest lesson from getting involved in that type of writing in that world?
I think the biggest lesson has been that I have to enjoy every step of it and not think about the end goal so much. I actually I sold the rights to that first book 20 years ago. And it was my very first book, my very first experience with Hollywood. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have this movie made and like it's going to be amazing. And like here begins my Hollywood career. And then it just went away. And I didn't realize at the time that that could happen, but that taught me the lesson that I just have to enjoy every moment of it. I mean, it's cool to work with another writer or to work with an actress or to work with a director or to work with a producer and bring them into a creative vision that for me was a very lonely thing that existed with me behind my laptop, typing this book out, just me, myself, and I, right? And now there are all these people collaborating on it who have feelings about it and, have a different vision for it. And it's just so rewarding. And I have to enjoy that and not worry about whether or not it's going to get to the finish line.
Yeah, definitely. Such a different world. I mean, publishing is a
Yeah.
world in and of itself that I've learned a lot
Yeah.
about from starting this podcast. Let's talk a little bit about the book. I
Sure.
love the relationship between Colette and her mother. I mean, she's her mother's daughter. What is it like to explore those relationships as a mom yourself?
It's a good point. And I feel like I explored motherhood a little bit more in the Paris Daughter, which was my previous novel. And that one I always say I made it the Paris Daughter rather than the Paris Son because I have a son and I think I couldn't bring myself that extra step to imagine 100% facing those things with my child. So like giving her a daughter rather than a son, I think separated me a little bit more from it. I think that this book was maybe even a little bit more of of an exploration of my relationship with my mom as opposed to my relationship with my
Hmm,
child.
okay.
In terms of thinking how you carry your parents' expectations with you as you go through life, and how you do that partially out of a sense of duty and love for that parent because you want to carry forward their dreams for you. But sometimes the dreams they have for you are different than the dreams you might have for yourself. And I think you have to choose. You have to choose which things to carry forward and which things are the things you're allowed to chart your own course forward with. And so I think that for me, it maybe solved some things in my head with my own parents, if that makes sense.
No, I love that. That totally makes sense. What was your favorite thing about this story and your favorite thing about writing this book?
I think that my favorite thing about writing the book would either be the redemptive story arc that Colette goes on as she figures out who she is. And you know, I love the idea that there's still time. As long as you're alive, there's still time. You know, I think we think, well, she's in her 80s. She's not going to change. She is who she is. But no, like she had growing left to do, and she did it. She grew. And I think that's something that all of us continue to do our whole lives through if we stay open to it. So I think sending her on that journey was really rewarding for me. But it was also really fun to write about a jewel thief. I mean, I loved her. She was just like this feisty older lady who like had no problem
Yeah.
slipping the bracelet off of like some jerk's wrist. You know what I mean? I loved her sense of justice. I loved her sense of outrage about things. I loved the way she operated. And it was fun to do the research into actually how to steal jewels. So I can't say that I think I would make a very good jewel thief myself. I think Colette was much more subtle than I was. I would probably, you know, bump against the person 20 times in the process of trying to get a piece of jewelry off of them. But it was really fun to learn how to do that and to give those skills to Colette.
I know when I was reading it, I was thinking, how in the world is she going to do this? Like the clasps and the how they distract people. And I mean, I just love any book that has a character who is in her 80s. I mean, I feel like it's something I'm seeing a lot more now,
Yeah.
but it felt like for a long time books are about women of a certain age. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but it's so refreshing to see someone, as you mentioned, who's still learning, who's still growing and stealing jewels. How did you learn about jewel thieves?
It's a good question. I have read a few memoirs from thieves and specifically jewel thieves, which I think I mentioned in the author's note. But some of the most helpful things were actually watching how-to videos from magicians explaining how they did some of their sleight of hand magic tricks. So if you think about some of those, uh, like shows on television where you know that feature magicians, or if you've ever gone to a live magic show, one of the tricks that's often done is stealing a watch from somebody. And of course, they don't keep it. They're not profiting. They're not doing what Colette does, but they were removing it from the person's wrist or taking the ring from their finger, or, you know, these things that Colette has to do in the book. They are performing it as a magic trick. So it was interesting to me to figure out how a magician would do that because really it's the same thing that a jewel thief would do. And a lot of it has to do with distraction. So that was a really interesting lesson to me too. I'll keep working on it. If the writing career doesn't work out, I may yet become a jewel thief. It
Right?
seems like an appealing career.
I mean, she got away with it for a long time.
She really
Yeah.
did. She really did. And you know, we do meet her in her 80s in the book, but we also see a lot of chapters in the past where she's 14. And I feel like that's a different end of the spectrum too, because when you're 14, you're at a completely different place of figuring out who you are and who you're going to be. And then we also see some chapters from the perspective of her mother, Annabelle, who is in her 30s. So it's like we get to see sort of these different steps of people figuring out who they are and these different steps of womanhood along the way, I think.
And you get multiple POVs and dual
Yeah.
timeline, which dual
Yeah.
timeline is one of my favorite tools
Me
to
too.
see and read in a book. As a writer, how is it helpful for you to move the story along?
You know, I've talked to other historical fiction writers who I'm friends with about how they do their dual timelines, like how they actually write them. And some of them separate the two storylines out during the writing process and then weave them back together. I have a different approach. I write the book that you hold in your hands is as I wrote it. Like I wrote it from start to finish, not the two separate chronological lines. And the reason for that is I think that I give you something from the present And then I give you the thing from the past that clarifies it and moves the story a step further. And then I give you what that event in the past led to in the present, and it kind of goes hand in hand. Um, and I think that if you think about it, life is a little bit like that too. There are things from our past that influence the decisions we make in the present. And, we're not all living dual timelines, but I think sometimes you make a decision and you think, well, I'm making this decision because of this thing that happened to me 20 years ago. Or maybe you don't even know that's why you're making the decision. But a lot of the things that went into the formation of us are the things that make us do the things we do now. And so I think we're all kind of living a dual timeline
Yeah.
story. We just don't always know it.
Yeah. And one of the timelines is set during World War II, again in Paris. What is it about World War II specifically that you're so drawn to and writing books about?
I think that World War II I think World War II is really a great example of a time when civilians made a huge difference. Ordinary people had to stand up and do extraordinary things. And I think that that is a message that never gets old and that will always feel timely because we all have that opportunity to do that every single day. I mean, we're not in the midst of a world war right now, thank God. But but we all have the ability to make choices in our daily lives that make the world better. Little acts of heroism, little acts of bravery, little acts of standing up for other people that I think can make the world a better place. And I think nothing exemplifies that better than World War II.
Yeah. And I think what I really loved in the point made in the book is it doesn't have to be some big thing that you're doing. It can be a
No.
small thing. It can be a small act of kindness. And I think what's great about Colette's story is you see sort of her life and all the things that she had done that sort of add up, like little things that sort of add up in a big way, without, we won't spoil too much of it, but
Yes, exactly. And I think that's important to remember that it doesn't always have to be grand gestures. It can be the little moments, the little things, the little decisions. Those are the things that shape the world. And I think it's a good reminder to just be brave in our daily lives.
I love that. So we know you're a writer. I love on your Instagram how you're always recommending books and giving shout outs to other authors. Why is that important for you?
I think that my friend Mary Kay Andrews, who I do a show called Friends in Fiction with, is always saying, and I know it's not her quote, but she's always reminding us, a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that's so true. I think that, this community of writers is such a supportive community with very few exceptions, with everybody really trying their hardest to lift each other up. And I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with World War II. It's those little acts of goodness, those little acts of kindness that make the world a better place. And to do something nice, to do something kind, it doesn't cost you anything. But maybe I recommend a book that you hadn't heard about yet or that you had forgotten was coming out, and you pick up that book and you fall in love with that book. And I've done a good thing by reminding you that you should have that book in your hands. So I think it's important, and I've received that support just as much from other authors, and it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I love it. I love seeing other authors support each other, and it's something I've really learned from the podcast that happens a lot. What is it
Yeah.
like hosting the show with your other author friends?
Oh, it's amazing. So we founded Friends in Fiction in April of 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. We thought we were only going to do it for 7 weeks because we thought by Memorial Day things would be back to normal. Spoiler alert, things
Yeah.
were not back to normal. But so we've been doing it for more than 5 years now, and it's me, Mary Kay Andrews, Christy Woodson Harvey, and Patty Callahan Henry. They are three of my closest friends in the world. We all genuinely love each other. We all get to go on tour together. They're actually meeting me on my launch day for The Stolen Life of
Oh,
Colette Marceau for a big event in New Jersey. We just did a big one for Christy for her recent book, Beach House Rules. And it's so rewarding. I get to do this wonderful thing with three of my best friends, and we get to welcome other authors, just like you do. Get to welcome other authors and celebrate their books and ask them questions. I can't imagine anything better. It's a whole lot of fun.
truly a dream job. I can
A
imagine for
dream
sure.
job, exactly.
What are some of the books that you've read recently that you've really loved?
Christie's book is fantastic. Christie Woodson Harvey's Beach House Rules. It is the perfect book to put in your beach bag. It has such great, like beachy, summery vibes, but there's a real depth to the story too. And it explores very much like Friends in Fiction, very much like The Stolen Life of Colette Marceau, how women can lift each other up. So I think it's such a great book to read right now. That one's fantastic. What else have I read recently? Christina McMorris has a new book out. I'm looking
Oh
around
yeah.
to see if I have it. It is The Girls of Good Fortune. That is phenomenal too. I loved that book. I'm in the midst of reading Adriana Trigiani's The View
Oh
from Lake Como, which is so
yeah.
good. And I
She
just finished Meg Waite Clayton's Typewriter Beach, which was also a real joy. So those are all different types of books, but they are all books I've read within the last month and absolutely loved.
I've met Adriana in person before, and she's like one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life.
She is a force. I mean, she walks into a room and it's like the energy of the entire room
Oh yeah.
changes. She's incredible.
She hosts a big literary conference that happens here in Phoenix every year, and I've been lucky enough to go the last couple years, and like I could watch her talk like all day about anything. She's so entertaining.
She is incredible. I
Yeah.
completely agree. Yes.
As people are getting ready to pick up your new book, what do you hope they take away from it?
I hope they take away the idea that every extra year you get is a gift. It's never too late to change. And you should always have the courage to look inside and figure out who you are rather than letting other people write your story.
I love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much. I loved this book. Love your message. Can you tell us the next book you're working on? If you already are working on your next book project?
Sure. Yeah, it'll be out hopefully next year, 2026. And it's a little bit of a departure for me. The last time I wrote a non-historical book was 2014. So it's been over a decade.
Wow.
But this one's not historical. There is one storyline that touches on World War II, but it's two characters in the modern day who met during World War II. So there's a little World War II storyline in there without actually taking us back. But I pitched it as Love Actually meets The Notebook,
Oh.
set entirely in modern day Paris.
Oh.
So it is several intertwining love stories of Americans in Paris over the course of 5 days, as they all kind of find their way toward the best version of themselves.
Mm.
So I really wanted to have that Love Actually vibe. And I am working now with my editor on kind of hammering down on these storylines and making them intertwine even a little bit better, so that it really has that Love Actually feel to it, which I love Love Actually. It's one of my
Oh,
very favorite
it's so
movies.
good. It's like there's always an annual rewatch of Love Actually,
Yes,
no
yes,
matter what.
absolutely.
Maybe
Yep.
not even during Christmas. It doesn't need to be Christmas. It can be
It
any
doesn't
time.
need to be, exactly.
I meant to ask you too. You spent some time in Paris. You said you lived there for a summer.
I
You've
did.
had multiple books that obviously take place in
Yeah.
Paris. What is so special about that city for you?
Paris is the place I found myself. So, when I lived there briefly in my early 20s, I was very much in the midst of this very like nose to the grindstone, like strive kind of lifestyle where, yeah, I was writing for magazines. I knew I wanted to write books one day, but there wouldn't have been a second of spare time to do that in this life I had charted for myself because I was working like 60 or 70 hours a week writing for magazines, just trying to do everything I could to move up the ladder in that world. Spending 3 months away from that, although I did a little bit of magazine writing when I was in Paris, but really kind of stepping off that treadmill to nowhere when I was in Paris taught me to ask myself, well, who do I want to be? What do I want out of my life? Is this what I want, or do I want to be writing books, the thing I've always dreamed of? And so that is the summer I started writing my very first novel. It's the summer I gave myself permission to be who I wanted to be, really, for the first time. And I think there has always been that sense of that for me in Paris. So it is a very personally magical place. And
Mhm.
I think it is a city that teaches you to stop and smell the roses and to appreciate the little things. And I think that's something that everybody there, when they travel to Paris, experiences.
Yeah. Everywhere you look there, you see something beautiful or something
It's
historic
beautiful.
or something
Yeah.
that you didn't even realize was a big part of his story. I've been
Yeah.
once before and would love to go back. It's such a beautiful place. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for having your book set there and your upcoming book there too as
Yeah.
well. Will
Thank
that include a
you.
research trip to Paris?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Why do you think I keep writing books about
Yeah.
Paris? So I can be like, oh, I have to go back.
You have
Yeah.
to. Okay, great. Well, Kristen, thank you so much. Have fun on the book tour and
Thank
congratulations.
you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and thanks for asking such great questions.